Jay Austen wrote a book. I've put the copy of it just right out there. It's about parenting, and I chose the book for this month's parenting because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about raising up a child, so all about parenting. And if you're not a parent, don't worry, because this month it's going to be applicable to everybody. So if you're a parent, though, I would highly recommend reading this book. It's a quick, easy read. You can probably read it in an afternoon. And the reason that I liked it so much was because it gives you all of these ideas about what intentional parenting looks like. And that is something that I did not do. I was not a good, intentional parent. And what I mean by that is just thinking about having that connection with your kids in ways that are going to be more than just the bare minimum. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. What we're going to talk about today, I'm just talking about the minimum standards, and I'm kind of pulling this a little bit from our speaker, Ivy Marsh, who spoke a couple weeks ago. I like the fact that he presented things in this. This is just the bare minimum. But obviously, you can go above this. But what I'm going to talk about this month in parenting is bare minimum stuff. And I have found that unless you are intentional about parenting, then there's going to be a lot of things that get dropped along the way. And before you realize it, you're going to blink and your kids are going to be grown. Or kids, your mom and dad are going to be old. And you're going to be scratching your head thinking, wow, what happened? How did I blink and I'm already ready to go into college? How did I blink and I'm already graduating from college? How did I blink and I'm married and expecting a child? And life goes by just like that, so quickly. And so you have to be intentional. So as I'm talking to you all as a church family, nothing that I say this month in any way is going to be pointing fingers at anybody, because I have failed and failed and failed as a parent. And there is not a single parent in here that can say, hey, Craig, I've done everything right as a parent, because we have all made mistakes. So what I'm going to hopefully accomplish this month is to present some ideas, some things that are relevant to not only children, but also to parents in a way that I hope is going to be meaningful. It's going to be something that if you're planning to be a parent, you can already get a head start. You can learn from my mistakes and just start thinking about what it means to be a godly parent. In a lot of ways, I'm going to paint with some broad strokes, okay? So try not to be offended, okay? There is going to be some sensitive stuff that I'm going to talk about, but I would not be talking about it unless it is stuff that we need and must hear, okay? Because there are some things that we're doing that have just got to stop. If we're in any way interested or concerned about the future of the church, there are things that we have got to change our paradigm on. It's imperative. And this is not me just spouting opinion. Okay, I'm going to say there are some things I'm going to say that are based on strong, empirical, evidential evidence that the church at large is just kind of looking the other way because we've gotten used to we have gotten used to certain things, doing things a certain way. Well, we always did it that way. We've always done it that way. Okay, we need to just stop and do a self-check for a minute, okay? So that's my introduction. So what are God's expectations? There's obviously other verses, but these are the three main verses that I want to pull our attention to this week, because there's some stuff here that we can pull out. Jordan read Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. If you read that, if you listen to what he said, if you listen to what God is saying there, this is parenting that is just, God is everywhere. God is everything. God is a part of your life. You do not have to be a biblical expert to be a godly parent. Let me say that again. You do not have to be a biblical expert to be a godly parent. I interviewed a few weeks ago J.J. Davenport and her husband, and she said something really interesting. She said, my mom was not a biblical scholar by any means. But what she did, every time we were in the car, there was some conversation about God. She found a empty parking space up front, close to the front doors. And she said, oh, bless God, he's looking after it. So she turned every situation into a situation where she was directing her kid's attention, her child's attention to God. Put it on your doorsteps. Talk about it day and night. This is a situation where your child, if you were to ask that child, hey, what's important to your mom and dad? They're going to say, well, I'm going to have to say God because they talk about him all the time. When you get up, when you go to bed, put it on your forehead, put it on your doorframe. So God is the central focus. Everything else in life, and I mean everything, fits in to the circle, okay, big circle of your relationship with God. God is the priority. So ball games, jobs, work, hobbies, interest, that's fine, as long as it is inside of the circle that encompasses. And that encompassment is the circle of God. God is everything. So if any of that stuff that goes inside that circle interferes, it doesn't belong. It's not part of. If something else is taking priority, it does not belong. It interferes. It gets pushed to the side because God is the priority. And that's the main message. As parents, we are obligated and we are under instruction by God to make that known to our kids. God before everything. He is the most important thing in our life. Not even your wife, not even your husband, not even your kids. God is the most important thing in your life. So if your children are walking away and they're graduating high school and they're moving along in life and they're coming away with what's important to dad? He likes golf. He likes to hunt. He likes to fish. Something has happened. The child should walk away knowing that the most important thing in your dad's life, in your mom's life, is God. Proverbs 22, verse 6. Parents are the spiritual trainers for their children. That's basically what it's saying. It's mom and dad's responsibility, not anybody else's responsibility. It's mom and dad's responsibility to provide the spiritual nourishment that their child receives. End of story, period. They're getting that from somewhere else, then that's a little bit of an issue. I'm going to talk about that in detail in just a minute. And then Ephesians 6:4, fathers are to be the spiritual leaders. A lot of the issues that I'm seeing today that I saw as the past 12 years as a campus minister, these kids, why they're leaving the church and stuff, is because dads abdicated their job, their responsibility. They gave it off to somebody else. They're not doing what they are supposed to be doing. Dads are supposed to be the spiritual leaders of the house. So what's the impact of that? Well, first of all, it does something that's not happening at all today. It grounds our children in their true identity. You want to know why all the kids today are struggling with who they are and what their identity is? It's because they're not getting the foundation set at home. God's not the priority. That's the biggest impact. The second thing is that it paves the way for sticky faith. And what I mean by that is that parents who have established that as the paradigm, that is the picture, that God is the number one priority, and everything else in life fits into that. When that child leaves the home, they are much more likely to stay in church. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute too. So just understand this. The responsibility, I'm reiterating now, the responsibility belongs to mom and dads. The spiritual edification, the spiritual training, the spiritual nourishment belongs with mom and dad at home. Okay? Everything else, church, youth programs, that's all supplemental stuff. Not primary, that's supplemental, that's secondary. Moms and dads are given the responsibility, minimum standard, moms and dads are given the responsibility to provide the spiritual nourishment to their children at home. So, I've seen that there's three major issues that have arisen that are related, that are directly correlated to why our kids are the way that they are. Broad stroke, why our kids are the way they are. The first one is technology, the second is isolationism, and the third is shifting responsibility. I said that parents are the primary teachers and that church is secondary. Youth ministry, and I'm just going to say a few words about this because I'm going to kind of start here and then I'm going to finish here. Youth ministry, and by the way, I don't have anything against youth ministry, but we need to understand that it's a relatively new concept. There didn't used to be a thing such as youth ministers. Okay, that's relatively new. And so if we understand that that is something that has been brought forth as an idea, we also need to understand that it inherently brought some risk factors that church leaders didn't think about. And why would they? Okay? Because what this was a response to the hectic, busy schedules of parents and church leaders understanding that and wanting to respond to that in a way that is going to help out moms and dads at home. But what happened is there was a slight shift, and now youth minister and churches became more of the primary input, and moms and dads became secondary. Okay? And so that created some complications, some issues. I'm going to say this before I move on. Moms and dads, we as a church family, okay, as Christian parents, we get most of it right. But the things that we are not getting are really big issues. And the thing that makes this scary is that Satan has taken these three issues and captivated on it in a way that I have never seen before. There's new stuff happening in the last 20 years that's this, as a society, we've never experienced before. Okay? So I want you to leave today understanding what those issues are so we can react to it. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about technology. There's several points here. I don't know if you can see it in the back, but it says screens are raising our children. What's the picture of the typical home? Everyone goes to their space, and it leads to all of this technology stuff leads to major issue number 2. The typical family right now is that moms and dads have a busy job. They do their thing. They come home. Somebody's supposed to get dinner together. Somebody's supposed to go pick up Johnny at his ball game practice, then get back. Then you got homework to do, and then you got all of this stuff. And then before you realize it, it's time for bed. And what are your kids doing at that point? And what I am seeing as I talk to the kids that have come through their home life and they've graduated and they're off on their own for the first time, and I talk to them about, tell me a little bit about your home environment. What did that look like? I get the answer I expect. Moms and dads were really busy. They both had to work because it was a dual income family and life is hard. And so we were really busy with stuff, and I had all these activities to do. And then I came home. I'm like, well, what did that look like when you came home? Well, I was over here, and my brother was over here, and my sister was in her room doing homework. And, well, what about dinner? Well, I mean, we grabbed what we could. A lot of takeout, a lot of fast food, that kind of stuff. Okay? And then the evening wasn't spent together as a family. It was everybody going to their personal screens. Mom has her screen, dad has his screen, and all the kids are in their bedrooms and they have their own screens. Okay? This may sound simplistic, but there's something that happened when the family migrated from the sacredness of the table where dinner was served each night. And I know that this sounds old-fashioned, but there's something that happened when we migrated from the table into our separate bedrooms and domains. Something got left behind, something important. If I need to ground this in Scripture with you, I can do that, but we don't have the time. But just know, I'm hitting the top surfaces here. If you go to Scripture and you look, again, not to make it simplistic, the table, coming together and eating was a vital element in the spiritual edification of not only homes, but the church at large. And the first century Christians loved to eat. They liked fellowship, and that's what this year's theme is about. Don't minimize food. God gave us a stomach and taste buds for reasons. It brings us together. And when you look at it from the family dynamic, the family perspective of moms and dads and the children gathering around a meal, that's where some connections happen. That's where you can say, you know what? God is working. Have these open conversations. That is a foundational thing that dissolved. And if you don't think that that's important, you're being misled by Satan. It's vitally important. So all of this kind of stuff, this idea of how this thing right here, technology, has pulled us away, has ripped us apart from the family, and I'm not against this either, okay? But it's done its damage. And because of this, some of it necessary, it has led to a major crisis, which has led to issue number 2, isolationism. I want to talk about that. Technology can bring people who are far away close, but it also makes those who are close far away. Everybody in this room is guilty of this. Well, I say everybody, maybe not. Some of y'all may not even have technology. Dr. Beasley, do you have technology? You're good. Okay. You know what I think? I think you know what I'm talking about. Like, you can be in the same room with somebody. If you go out to dinner, and I like to look at the different couples, and they're sitting there, and neither one of them are saying a word. They're just on their phones. I'm guilty of that too. As a society, we are more connected today than we've ever been, but weirdly enough, we're also more disconnected than we've ever been. That bleeds over into the family. Technology pulls us apart, and here's the scary thing, and I want to make sure that I get this right here, because there's a book written called The Opt-Out Family. The lady, her name is, if you want to look this up, Erin Lochner, and she was a social media influencer. For those that don't know what that word means, it means that she had a lot of followers on Instagram. She had over millions and millions of followers on Instagram, and it was because of this, and so she opted out of this. And her husband worked in Silicon Valley. He was a programmer, and so these are two people that are very, very connected to technology. They walked away from it. They gave it up because they recognized the dangers and the breakdown in family that the technology was creating. And so this lady, she wrote this book. She was touring around. She was doing a conference, and some lady, some girl, some mother asked, she's like, when is the right time to give your kids a cell phone? When is the right time? How old should they be? She said, when you're ready for your child to view pornography, that's when you give them one of these. Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. 12 years as the campus minister, I interviewed literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students. And I asked them, same question. And it was dealing with pornography. And I did not get one person, one student, who said that they had not been exposed to pornography by the time that they were 18 years old. Every college student that came through the campus ministry has been exposed to pornography. Now, that doesn't mean that they're actively seeking it out. It just means that this thing right here is the gateway as parents, that we don't want our kids to be exposed to stuff. Okay? So when is the right time? Well, when you want your kids to be exposed to pornography. That leads to isolationism, because when you have the world in your pocket, parents, moms and dads, you need to understand that when your child is off in their bedroom by themselves and they have access to the world, that's giving them a whole lot of freedom. Now, I know that trust is a thing, okay? But I've talked to many parents who said, I trust my kid. I know that they've never seen any inappropriate images or videos or anything like that. But I'm hearing something totally different. And by the way, the kids that I'm being exposed to at the Student Center, these are kids coming from good Christian homes. Okay? So we're not immune to that. Please understand, just because you are a Christian doesn't mean that you're immune to that or your kids are immune to that. So if they're isolating themselves, and we are doing that more and more and more, then the opportunities for Satan to creep in and to open up a world that we would rather not have opened up to our kids also increases. So minimum requirements, moms and dads, you need to be aware of that. Get your head out of the sand and understand what is taking place in our world today. This is a battle.
For maybe other aspect.
And it's our kids' lives, our kids' souls that are on the line. That's the prize that Satan is after, because that's how he gets back at God. You get that, right? That's his get back. It's to pull as many of us from God as he can, because God loves it. I talked about this last week. Your value to God is so immense. And if Satan can pull something that God values so much into his claws, that is huge get back at God. And so he's going to use anything he can to do that. Namely, it's our technology and us drifting into isolationism. We're pulling away and we're segregating ourselves from our family.
That's right.
We have traded our table time for screen time. We've traded it. And problems within the home are dealt with privately. This is part of isolationism. We have a problem sharing our vulnerability with each other. You know it. I do. I don't want to air my dirty laundry. Betsy doesn't want to air her dirty laundry. I don't want to sit up here or stand up here and say all the failures we've had as parents. But understand this, there is dysfunction within most families. And if we deal with it privately and never say anything about it, we do two things. First of all, we pass that dysfunction on from generation to generation. That's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is we teach our kids, we show our kids that the way we deal with sin issues, the way that we deal with temptation, the way that we deal with Satan attacking us is privately at home. You do not go outside the home and share this stuff with anybody else because it's shameful. You keep that to yourselves. And so we have isolated ourselves in our dysfunctional family system where we can't rely on anybody else because that's seen as shameful. And the crazy thing about it is, we all have it. We all have dysfunction in our families. And what God has said, how we deal with this stuff, is we lean into, we go to our brothers and sisters. We confess our sins to one another. We rely on the church at large to help us out. And that is not a paradigm of Christianity today. We don't do that. If you disagree with me, I would like for you to come up after and talk to me about what that looks like. If you have that going on in your home church or where you've been before or had that in the past, I would like to know that because I want to copy that program. We need each other. We are a church community. And this is a battle, and one individual family is not going to be able to do it on their own. They're going to need good, reliable brothers and sisters. Now, I'm not suggesting you go out and you tell everybody in this room what your issue is. I'm suggesting that you go to somebody that you trust, like an elder or somebody that has your confidence, and you begin to deal with the stuff, the issues that you are facing. Why? This is related to parenting. Very much so related to parenting. Because here's what happens. And I don't say this lightly. And this is not necessarily pointing the finger at any parent in this room. Okay? But Wanda and I can both attest to this. After 12 years of working with college kids, with very few exceptions, did I see kids come in to a campus ministry who had the right idea of what it looked like to have an engaged family, engaged church, dealing with the sin issues of today. It was all done in the family. They didn't share that stuff. It was private. They kept it private. And here's how we cover this up. Here's how we appease this. Here's how we make this better. Because Church leaders are scratching their heads wondering, what do we need to do to fix this situation? That's where the youth ministry comes back in. Let me share something with you. The kids that came through our campus ministry program who are coming from these big, massive, robust youth ministry programs that you and I would look at and go, wow, we would love to have that at Central. Those were the very kids that left. Those were the very kids that I don't know where they went to. They're gone. They're not in church anywhere. You want to know the kids that stuck around, that became the church leaders, that sunk deep roots and had sticky faith were the ones that did not have the big, robust youth programs. And they were the ones that had churches who were engaged and parents who were engaged. And they had intergenerational connections with one another. The stuff that we're doing here at Central, the monthly things, it's very intentional. If you have not caught on that yet, it is very intentional, and it is set up to have intergenerational connections where we're having our young kids interact with our older folks and everything in between, because that is what builds sticky faith. Two-thirds of our kids are leaving the faith, and they're not coming back. They're gone. That's not a sustainable number. We can project that out just 2 more cycles and church is no more. We've got to change the paradigm, because the paradigm of the robust youth ministry programs where we're doing the activities and stuff is not planting the roots that we would hope would be planted. That's coming from family. I had a girl one time years ago. She came to me in tears. She said, this is the most awesome thing. And she would get a care package every week from her church, from her home congregation. Not just her mom and dad, not just engaged parents, but an engaged church leadership. She got a care package every week with all sorts of cool stuff inside it. And she was in tears. That's a girl who was invested in her church. That is a girl who is still in the church today. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. But there seemed to be this collective sigh of relief when we passed on our responsibilities as moms and dads to provide the spiritual nourishment that our kids need to a youth ministry or church leadership program. And we let the youth ministry program at a church become the primary influencer of our kids, and moms and dads became supplemental. It needs to be reversed. I'm not against youth programs at all, because we need all the help we can get. But it needs to be flipped back to what God says. Moms and dads, you're the primary responsibility. It's your job to raise your kids in an environment where they know that God is the priority in your life. And hopefully the youth minister is going to moms and dads saying, are you doing this? Holding them accountable, saying, hey, are you doing this? Do you need something from me? What resource can I provide? How can I help out? But you know what? Our schedules are so hectic and so busy, and we filled them up with so much stuff that, my goodness, it's a relief to just push that huge responsibility off on somebody else, because then we don't have to suffer the consequence. It's not on our conscience when our kids walk away from the faith. We say, well, if our youth minister had done a better job, if our youth minister had been more engaged in our kids, if our youth minister had done more activities, if our church leader had planned more events or given more resources to our youth ministers. And so right now, we have people all across churches, church hopping, trying to find that one program that has the best activities and more stuff, and they're missing it. And those kids that go through that program are going to leave the church. And we need to be responding to that. Moms and dads, you need to understand what that looks like. We build it with what we've got, and we engage our kids, and we're intentional about it. We need church leaders. We need elders. If you're an elder here, listen up. We need you to provide the resources, and I don't mean just monetarily. I mean providing the resources for our youth minister to be putting a program together that holds moms and dads accountable. It's not fair to hold Jed responsible for your kid's salvation, whether or not your kid gets baptized or whatever it may be. You expect him to do that in the 2 or 3 hours a week that he has your kids when you have them all the time. That's not right. And I have heard that over and over for the past 12 years. I've heard that philosophy, and I'm sick of it. It's got to stop. What else? What other sign do we need in order for us collectively as a church to understand this is where we're at? Now, what are we going to do about it to fix it?
It's getting done. It's still comfort.
Yep.
There has been a complete abdication of giving up of parental responsibility, and it's being enabled by the way churches do church today, by our youth programs. Just so we're clear, okay, because I don't want everybody coming up to me after this saying, how dare you, okay? I'm not against youth ministry programs. I'm an advocate for it if it's done correctly. And I'm begging moms and dads to understand the situation we're at and to know what I know and to have seen what I've seen, which is after 12 years of campus ministry, the ones that stick around are the ones that come from a paradigm that does not have the big, massive, robust youth programs. If you want statistically to know that, I can provide those numbers to you. I tracked all the data for 12 years, okay? It is what it is. I can't change the numbers. That's the reality, okay? Don't want to scare anybody off the big, robust youth programs, but I'm telling you this. If at home there's not more of a focus and an emphasis on the spiritual requirements that God expects moms and dads to provide their kids, if that's not there at home, if it's all on the big, robust youth ministry program, your kid has a very small chance of sticking to the faith. This is a room of 150 people. 2/3 are going to be gone. If we're all kids in the youth ministry program, 150 youth, okay, 100 are gone. Is my math correct on that? 1/3 or 2/3 rather? So only 50 stick around. That's the number that we see as we track the big programs that have these, what we would consider the awesome youth programs. Okay? Broad stroke, big picture. And that's what I was after. I wanted to know what was going on, why our kids were leaving the faith. That's one of the primary reasons. Okay? It's up to you, moms and dads, to be the spiritual trainer at home, and that has to be intentional. You got to be thinking about it. You have to be looking for every opportunity you can to talk to your kids about God. If you're not doing that, you're not doing what God has said you need to do as moms and dads. Okay? That's the bottom line. So where are you at? What are you going to do? We're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, or are we going to pivot and understand, okay, this is what we're getting, and this is what we've been getting over and over and over again. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. We're 57 years into this. We have over 57 years of data that very plainly point out, hey, guys, this isn't working. Okay, let's keep doing it. Oh, we have to change. If we will go back to the way God said we need to do it, and that's getting messy and real with each other, that's becoming koinonia, however you want to say that word, fellowship, family with each other, the church at large, because me and Betsy can't do it alone. A lot of the stuff with my own 3 kids, and the reason they're still plugged in here, is not any great thing that Betsy or I did, because we did a lot of failing. We relied on our church family. And that can be messy, and that can be embarrassing. Okay? Let's get over ourselves and understand what's at stake here. Okay? It's our kids' salvation. That's what we're in the battle for. That's what we're fighting for. So that's about moms and dads this week. Next week, I'm going to pivot to church leadership. If I need to go ahead and put in my resignation as the minister, I'm not holding back any punches this month. It's important. This is important stuff, okay? I'm going to end with this. There is no greater blessing that God has given than to be moms and dads. Man, what an incredible ride it has been for me. Ups and downs, highs and lows. People say, all the gray coming in my head was because of doing campus. It's not. It's because of my 3 kids. Who am I joking? Primarily Kaylee. But it's been great, and I've learned a lot, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And for the majority of y'all have been there to watch my kids grow up, and you've poured into them too. And we just need to bottle that and share it. Bottle it as in manufacture and get that type of system out more prevalent, where we recognize that we're intentional about it. It's not just something that's accidentally happening. Okay.